welcome to this special edition of India Revival Mission, ET Now series that brings you conversations with business leaders and policy makers to understand how best we can revive India, leverage our inherent strengths, and bring out solutions to script a growth story. Our guest today is the CEO of one of the world's leading BPM companies, Genpact. Now, Genpact has successfully managed to move a majority of its employees remote like many other technology companies and is now seeing an accelerated shift to digital from its clients. Joining me all the way from the US, Tiger Tyagarajan from Genpact. Thank you very much for joining us on this edition of India Revival Mission. Let me begin by asking, it's been a while since we connected. How have things evolved since the initial COVID shock to now? You've managed to move thousands of employees to remote work mode. So how are things now compared to the initial phase? It must have been quite a roller coaster ride.
Chandra, thanks for having me on the show. Delighted to be here. It's been a roller coaster last 8 months. The world went into a shock for sure in the early part of March as lockdown swept across the globe. And that's what we went through, starting with China, actually in late Feb, when we went into lockdown in China, and then followed into Europe, the US, and then finally Latin America, India, and Philippines. And since the early days of March, we've been running the firm pretty much remotely. 90,000 plus of our 100,000 employees today work from home. A predominant, almost the entire workforce in China is back in the office and has been back in the office for the last 3 months. A few critical staff are back in India and Philippines, but other than that, everyone else is working from home, and so are our clients. And we've learned a lot through this journey, and one of the learnings has been the extent to which digital and collaborative tools and technologies have always been available. And yet, either enterprises or individuals or teams had not leveraged it to the fullest extent. And what COVID-19 did was force everyone to leverage digital technologies, allow virtual work to happen. And that, in a sense, has accelerated digital transformation, the way you described it, from a multi-year journey to maybe 1 or 2 years, compressing 5-year cycles into 18-month cycles. Decision-making is compressed into weeks rather than years. And all of that, for the long term, is actually good for the economy, good for the business, good for consumers. It was bound to happen at some point in time, but COVID-19 has accelerated it.
Tiger, the IT and BPM industry has traditionally been an engine of job creation, wealth creation, growth for India. It's also had a huge impact thanks to the allied industries. Now, if you look at the performances of companies, of big IT companies in the last few weeks, hiring is back, salary hikes are back. So, has Diwali in that sense come early? And is the technology industry, the IT BPM industry, going to be that engine that's going to play a critical role in scripting the revival story for India?
So let me give you my perspective, Chandra, and I'll try and answer your question and statement in 3 or 4 different ways. So I'll start by saying our industry is focused on talent, is focused on great talent that constantly learns new technologies, that constantly learns new things that are relevant for the world today and tomorrow. So if you think about that, our industry, therefore, is often a bellwether. I wouldn't necessarily call it a bellwether for wealth creation. I would call it a bellwether for innovation, a bellwether for what's coming next, both in the world and in India. So if you think over the last 10, 15 years, some of the use of new technologies in the Indian economy was accelerated by the fact that millions of people in our industry were already developing, using, and helping our clients across the globe implement those technologies. So then the absorption of that technology in the Indian economy got accelerated. Similarly, I would say the acceleration to the cloud, which is one of the trends that we think is going to be here to stay for quite some time to come, accelerated by COVID-19, or the use of analytics for predictive insights that then can be used for real-time decision making. Again, we are seeing this across the globe. Our industry and the talent in our industry is learning new methods of helping our clients predict demand, predict supply, identify fraud. And all of those then become solutions, ways of thinking, innovation, technologies that the Indian economy can use. So I would say our industry becomes the bellwether for the future of the economy. I wouldn't necessarily call it wealth creation. The second perspective I would have is celebrating Diwali early. I would not do that. I wouldn't celebrate Diwali early because the world is volatile. COVID-19 and the pandemic continues to have its ups and downs in different parts of the world, in different countries, in different economies, in different cities. Governments in different jurisdictions have to take decisions based on how that progresses over the next few months, which in the Northern Hemisphere is winter, and then into next year. The ripple effect of that in the economy, in our clients, is still to be fully felt. So I wouldn't necessarily call it Diwali, but I think we weathered the first 8 months of the storm incredibly well. I think there is an opportunity to help our clients digitally transform in an accelerated way. I think our talent pool is ready to learn new skills, and we know how to teach new skills to allow them to help our clients. So when you put that together, we are probably better positioned than any industry in the world. And therefore, things like salary increases and promotions, which many of us had frozen, will start coming back. But I wouldn't necessarily call it a big Diwali celebration.
Right, right. But do you think this is also an opportunity for India to reclaim its place as the world's outsourcing and IT hub? Now, though India has always had its strengths here, some of this has been moving to other emerging markets. So is this now an opportunity for India to become the undisputed leader, the IT hub, the outsourcing hub of the world? What steps can be taken in that direction?
So Chandra, again, I would actually have a different perspective, and to some extent, probably have a view that is not necessarily the same as that view. So first, I don't think India really lost its position as an incredibly important and one would argue preeminent ecosystem for the world over the last 20 years. Around technology transformation, helping companies leverage new tools and new methods of working, not just technology, new ways of working, new processes, application of Lean and Six Sigma, and driving improvements, driving customer delight. I think we've always had that preeminent position. I don't necessarily think of it as having been lost just because other economies become part of that ecosystem. We are big believers that for someone to win doesn't require someone else to lose. So what's our business? Our business is not a business that is only India. Our business is now delivered from 25 countries. India is the largest and will continue to be the largest and has been the largest from the beginning. But if along with India, we don't have some of our European team attached to it, if we do not have some of the US team attached to it, or the Philippines team attached to it, or the China team attached to it, or the Japanese team, or the Australia team, then actually value doesn't get delivered. So we've never thought of our business as an India business. I think that's a wrong way to think about it. So one, our business is not an India business. I don't think our industry's business is an India business. It's a global business. We've always prided ourselves on creating an ecosystem for our clients across multiple countries, leveraging different skills and time zones and ways of working. And India has had a preeminent position in that and will continue to have a preeminent position. However, It requires one thing, which is continuously learning and reskilling and being ready to leverage new technologies. The day we lose that edge, we're done. So in a way, it's good to feel as though we are not preeminent, because it's always good to feel like the underdog, because then you're always fighting to get better. But the reality is that we are large and we are important, and we've always been that way, and we've been preeminent. But never ever should we allow that to get into our head or our ego, as an individual, as a business, or as a country.
Right. You mentioned skilling in your answer. Now, in a world that's going to be built on data analytics and AI, where are we as far as skilling is concerned? Are engineers today being produced in India prepared to take this on? Or is the onus again going to fall on the industry to retrain, train some of these graduates, just like it's been doing in the last few decades? Where do things stand as far as reskilling, training is concerned, and being prepared for a world that's going to be run on analytics and AI?
So we are teaching people, thousands of people, AI and machine learning. We're putting them through certification boot camps. We are teaching thousands of people how to use design thinking, how to use critical thinking. We have, I think, probably 80,000 out of our 95,000 plus people enrolled on reskilling programs on our Genome platform. It's a platform where you do self-service learning. It's AI machine learning driven. It's individual customized learning based on your background, your skills, your desires, your passion, what job you're trying to get to. So I think all of us in the industry are doing a lot of things that actually is going to help reskilling. But what I really get excited about is the raw material.
Tiger, as I see it, there are two exciting trends playing out in India. So on the one hand, you have a lot of these startups, these unicorns who have raised billions of dollars in funding. They are disrupting many businesses. You also have a wider digitalization trend that's happening across sectors and segments. So financial services is, of course, one example. We've seen how fintech has evolved thanks to UPI. And we are also going to see this happening in agriculture, health, education. How do you really see this opportunity as an IT company, as a technology player?
I think it's a fabulous point, Chandra. One of the advantages, one of many advantages that India has is its population. At 1.2 plus billion people, you have a highly self-sustaining with a consumer demand and a rising GDP over the long haul and a rising middle class with consumption that provides a great avenue for new services, new products, built the new way, delivered the new way, starting from scratch. So one of the advantages that India has is the combination, not independent trends, but the combination of a large self-sustaining laboratory for experimentation. That laboratory is used by startups. The startups are getting funding. The startups are driven by entrepreneurs who come from some connected ecosystem of our kind of an industry, since we serve the world and we kind of have an ecosystem of teaching, learning, and reskilling. That drives everyone into the technology, digital, and the use of new technologies to solve new problems.
I think the industry is going to move to a visa independent model because of all the rhetoric that we've seen coming from the US. They have been stepping up localization, but is this an opportunity to become visa independent? Is that the way it's going to evolve? And do you really think the US presidential elections is going to move the needle in any way? What is your take on these aspects?
So on the first one, on visa independent, I think, Chanda, the right way to think about it is visas will always be there. One of the things that is important, not just for our industry, but for the world, is the ability for people and talent to move across borders, both for the short term and for the long term. When you have a thriving movement of labor force and talent and intellectual capital that can be leveraged across borders, that can actually contribute to innovation in different parts of the world and bring it back to other parts of the world, that creates an openness that ultimately raises the tide across the world. The moment you put borders and you block that, there is a price to pay. I'm sure there are benefits that people would like by putting those borders, but I would argue those are short-term benefits. Long-term, there's a price to pay. So forget about our industry. I think if that were to happen, then everyone will innovate in different ways on how do you deliver services without necessarily having to travel and be where our client is and where the problem is. Can that be done? The last 8 months have demonstrated it can be done. We've had no one travel for the last 8 months in the company. And yet, we're delivering services, we're delivering solutions, we're delivering consulting, we're delivering digital technologies, we're implementing new tools. We're teaching new people, new skills, hiring them, training them, and applying them to work in Bucharest, in China, in India, in Philippines, to serve clients across the globe. So can that be done? Of course it can be done. But does that make it a less exciting world? And are you going to miss some opportunities of true innovation sometimes when people get together across different cultures and diverse talent? I think you're going to miss that. So I hope the world doesn't go there, but I don't think that our industry is so dependent on visas and visas alone that it'll stop the industry. I think every industry will innovate.
Right. A final couple of questions from a policy perspective, from a reforms intervention perspective. What are the 1, 2, or 3 steps that can immediately be done to, accelerate the industry, accelerate the technology industry's growth, the BPM industry's growth even further? What would those 1 or 2 steps be?
So, Chandra, I've had a view on this for a long, long time. We serve about 500 global enterprises. We serve almost 50%, 40% of the global 500 companies. We serve large enterprises. When we serve them, one of the most important things for our clients and for us is speed. How quickly can you get to an answer? How quickly can you deliver a service? If I'm lending, how quickly can we make sure that the person who's applied for a loan is told a yes or a no? When an insurance customer applies for an insurance claim because they've had an accident, how quickly can we process the claim and get the money in the hands of that customer? When a business is placing an order for a goods or a service to another business, how quickly can that supply chain work and deliver? So speed is a currency that has huge value in the world of business. And yet, when it comes to governments, I don't think speed is measured. I don't think there is metrics that say we will deliver in 2 days what used to take 2 weeks. I don't think that is done as the most important thing. And if governments decide that one of the most important metrics for them is speed and everything will be measured as speed, I think it will change the game. I've had these conversations with many people in decision-making positions. I think they see the logic. And if there is a way to unlock speed, and that can be a combination of policies. So how quickly can you get an approval for a new enterprise that comes into the country? Can you do that in 3 days? What do you think it takes today? 1 year. Can that be done in 3 days? Well, if you can take a 21-day loan processing for $1 million financial services lending transaction down from 1 day to 8 minutes, 20 days to 8 minutes, why can't we change the way the government works everywhere in the world? And this is not just about India. I think this is applicable across the globe. There are exceptions. There are some great economies that have found ways to drive cycle time down. So I'm a big believer that cycle time determines value in the world, in almost everything. That's what lean principles teach you. Lean is about removing waste, and you remove waste by cutting cycle time down. I wish all governments across the world actually jumped on that and said, we're going to make decision making at rocket speed. I think it'll make a huge difference.
My final question, I read a comment of yours a few weeks ago where you spoke about how the large campuses as we know it is not going to be the future. But the counter argument is people believe that you do need these huge campuses because social capital is important, interactions are important. So how are we going to see the future of work and workplace evolve? Do you think we will still have over 95% of employees working from home, or are we going to move to a more hybrid model where perhaps the breakup would be 70%, 60%, 50%? How do you see this evolving?
So I think, Chandra, it would be fair to say that hybrid is the way we think about the world. It used to be 95% from offices. Today, it is 95% remote. Clearly, there is something in the middle that will happen. Is it going to be 50%? Is it going to be 60%? Is it going to be 40%? One, I don't know. Two, I think it is dependent on the type of work. It is dependent on the industry. It is dependent on the client. It is dependent on their risk appetite, their appetite to experiment, and it's dependent on what the employees want. Some employees actually would like to work in an office, and some employees would like much more flexibility to work from home. And sometimes it'll be a mixture for every service and for every employee. I come to office 1 week and I don't come to office another week. So we think about the world as a hybrid. Now, what does that mean? I don't think it means that large campuses are gone. What it does mean is the notion that the only way you drive social capital, the only way you drive teams together is to have campuses of 25,000 people. Why? Today, we're trying to drive social capital where everyone is at home. 100,000 people in 100,000 homes. Why does it have to be either that or people have to be in campuses of 10,000 people each? What if we think about workplaces of 500 people, 1,000 people? I think there's enough innovation and teams coming together that can happen. If you have 1,000 people offices.
On that note, then, thank you very much for joining us on ET Now and taking us through your own vision as far as the India Revival Mission is concerned. And hopefully we will connect soon in person. But thank you very much again for joining us on ET Now and take care back there in the US.
Thanks, Chandra. Take care. Bye.